When I started working on this video, I'll be honest, I've changed my thesis about a dozen times. Okay, maybe not a dozen, more like 3 times, but every version came down to one thing: how I saw Griffith. Because I am genuinely still on the fence about him. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him and what he went through and how he broke, but another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that he did have choices. He could have taken different paths, and yet every time he chose this one when he risked everything and everyone by sleeping with Charlotte, when he let his pride drive him to fight Guts instead of letting him go. And the elephant in the room, obviously, is when he sacrificed the very people who followed him into hell and raped a woman who had admired him once. And every moment was a step closer to the dream he couldn't let die. And this is exactly what gets me about Griffith, is that he doesn't do these things out of cruelty per se. It's almost like he's trapped by his own dream, and like he doesn't know who he is without it. Hey everyone, I'm Nikanak, and I make videos about everything I question and overthink, and today I want to talk about a man who wanted to find his place in the world and how far he was willing to go to make that dream real. So without further ado, let's get into it.
This is my chosen path. If I let myself feel regret or remorse, it could all slip away.
The Eclipse is not only a tragedy, it's the moment where every decision, every sacrifice, and every bit of ambition he ever had finally comes to fruition. When the Behelit activates, Griffith is broken, wrapped in bandages, barely alive. He doesn't even understand what's happening. Then the God Hand appears, calling him a kinsman, saying that the Crimson Behelit found its way to him because he already had the qualities to become one of them. In other words, he was always destined to be here. And as they speak, Griffith begins to see visions. He's a child again, asking strangers for directions to the castle. Then he finds the people who helped him, comrades, and even enemies, lying dead, their bodies piled at his feet, and the old woman looks at him and says,
"If you knew you were going to feel such remorse for your deeds, then you should not have ever come here to begin with. It is not a place for the delegates. Why couldn't you have been content to simply gaze at the castle from afar?"
And Griffith could have stayed where he was, just watching from the outside. Instead, he admits it.
I knew all along. And yet, I cannot apologize. I won't apologize. If I apologize, if I repent, everything will come to an end.
And in this moment, it's not his pride that's guiding him, it's his refusal to exist without the dream. And by now, the dream is this only thing holding him together. It's as if he's trying to convince himself that all the pain will still mean something, when he looks toward the glowing castle and says,
And then I would never reach my destined throne.
He isn't realizing he failed, he's realizing that he no longer knows who he is without the climb. His despair becomes complete, and that despair sets the sacrifice in motion. It's the part of him that would rather lose everything human than accept a life without purpose. And when the God Hand speaks, they appeal to the part of him that still believes that dream matters. What they're really describing is the psychological cost of obsession, and the more he strives for greatness, the more of his humanity is left behind.
Your entire existence stands on Griffith's dream. And when his dream is over and you finally awaken, you will join us in our never-ending dream.
These words carry no sense of fate, only the awareness of what he's become. He isn't being chosen, he's admitting what he already is. And when he becomes Femto, nothing new is created. It only shows how much of Griffith was already gone. The eclipse happens because he can't stop reaching, even when there's nothing left to reach for. It's the consequence of never being able to stop climbing, of never being able to say, "I've done enough." He's climbed so high that looking down feels more terrifying than continuing upward. And in his case, admitting defeat would mean admitting that the climb itself was meaningless. And that's what makes his story, for me personally, so tragic. In that moment, I don't think Griffith is a monster. He's just a man who built his entire identity around a dream he couldn't let die. And that dream shaped his every choice. And the road to the eclipse is really the story of how far he was willing to go to keep chasing it.
My faith has given me everything I have. And now, I have the honor of speaking to you, the princess of the kingdom.
Griffith, if anything, wasn't born into privilege. The castle that towered over the slums was the brightest thing he ever saw. Everything below it was narrow streets and hunger. That's where his dream began. It didn't come from greed or power. It came from the simple idea that he refused to stay where he was born. And he never stopped thinking about how far he was from the people who lived above him. That distance shaped how he saw the world. In one of his earlier conversations with Guts, he says,
In this world, there must be one man whose preordained course of life is the key to ruling the world, regardless of his existing social position or class. That man could be part of this world's true privileged class. That man could have the absolute power of a god. I know there's something more for me.
Griffith believes people like him exist for a reason, that if he suffers enough and fights hard enough, that he must be part of something bigger. He wants proof that he matters, proof that he's one of those rare people who can change the world just by existing in it. And when he forms the Band of the Hawk, that's what he's really doing. Everyone around him becomes part of it. They don't fight for gold or status, they fight because he makes them believe they're part of something greater. And Casca is one of the clearest examples. When she was younger, he saved her from an assault and handed her a sword, saying,
If you have something to protect, then take up the sword.
And that moment changes everything for her. From then on, her whole life revolves around him. That's the kind of person Griffith is. He doesn't just lead, he gives people meaning. And then there's Guts, who enters Griffith's life in a completely different way. He doesn't join the Band of the Hawk out of some kind of admiration for Griffith. He joins because he loses to Griffith in a fight. But over time, though, something changes. For Guts, the Hawks become a home. For Griffith, Guts becomes something he can't quite define, because Guts lives by instinct, not ambition, and that makes him the one person Griffith can't control. And that's exactly where everything starts to change. During his conversation with Princess Charlotte, Griffith opens up his yapper and says,
For me to call a man my friend, he must be my equal in every respect.
Griffith doesn't know that Guts is listening, but when Guts hears that, it changes everything. He realizes that if he ever wants to stand beside Griffith as an equal, he has to find his own path. So he leaves to find his dream. But for Griffith, it feels like betrayal. Griffith has always pretended that he could keep his feelings separate from his ambition, but that isn't true, mainly because that's not how human nature works. The calm and detached version of himself that everyone sees is just a mask. It's easier for people like him to act like they don't care than to admit how much they actually do. We see that mask slip when the boy dies on the battlefield.
I feel no responsibility to those comrades who've lost their lives in my service, because they chose to fight those battles, just as you chose, just as I.
Then he starts tearing into his shoulder or forearm. I'm gonna insert the correct video here. And that moment says everything we need to know. He feels the weight of every life that's been lost under his command, but he refuses to face it. And when Guts leaves, the same thing happens. He acts like it doesn't matter, but that's a lie he tells himself. His dream becomes the story he tells himself so the pain makes sense. If he can reach the top, then everything he's done has meaning. Every death, every compromise, even selling himself to the nobleman. He tells him it's all worth it if he can make the dream real. And if he achieves that, then none of it was for nothing. And he can believe that fate chose him and that every sacrifice was necessary. But when Guts walks away, that belief starts to crumble. The dream that once held him together begins to feel empty. And for the first time, he can't rationalize what he's feeling. The emotions that he probably spent years suppressing start to take control. He challenges Guts to another fight, trying to cling to something that he had already done and that he could potentially make him stay. But this time, it isn't about pride or control, it's about fear. If he can win, maybe nothing has changed. When he loses, everything inside him collapses. It's also the first time he lets himself feel the weight of what he's lost. This dream no longer feels like some sort of salvation, it feels like punishment if anything. And that's what leads him to Charlotte that night. His loneliness, and most likely his self-destruction, and deciding hell to all, I'll scorch my own earth. Because he needs something to convince him he still matters, that someone still wants him, that he can still reach his dream. Charlotte represents that dream he's been chasing since he was a child. Reaching for her feels like reaching for the dream itself, but this moment means nothing to him beyond trying to fill the emptiness he's been carrying. And this simple desire, I believe, is what leads him into his biggest mistake. The next morning, everything falls apart. The king has him arrested and thrown into a dungeon out of jealousy, because he wanted his daughter, Charlotte, all for himself, and Griffith's mistake gives him an excuse to destroy him. Overnight, the Band of the Hawk goes from a celebrated army to a group of fugitives. The dream that carried them all begins to crumble. Now, when Griffith is held prisoner, he endures a kind of horror that goes beyond pain. His tendons are cut, his tongue is removed, he's barely kept alive, just enough for the torturer to continue his own sadistic enjoyment. Months stretch into a full year, and by the time he's found, the man who once inspired armies is nothing but a shell of himself. The remainder of the Band of the Hawk risk everything to save him. They fight through monsters and men, through blood and chaos, just to pull him out of that cell. And when they do, what they rescue isn't the man they once knew. Then comes Wilde, an apostle who takes one look at Griffith and bursts into laughter. He says, look at this mangled body. I bet you plan to carry him up and make something of yourselves again. Too bad it'll never happen. He can't do battle anymore, or ride a horse, or wield a sword. None of you got any hope, not even a sliver. It's one of the most heartbreaking moments in the series, and not only towards Griffith, but also the Band of the Hawk, because it strips away the illusion Griffith has always lived behind. Wilde also sees what's been inside him all along, like Zod, and for once, he can't do anything to deny it or even question it. And after Wilde is killed, everything goes quiet. No one celebrates. There's nothing left to say.
He's so small and frail. How can I leave him? He's lost so much weight. He's always shivering. Griffith used to be so strong and confident. I can't leave him behind. Not like this. I can't leave him like this.
And when Casca says this, the last of his pride just slips away. The woman who once looked at him with awe now looks at him with mercy. He can't move, he can't speak, and for the first time, he feels smaller than the world around him.
Griffith, please stop this.
So he decides to run because he doesn't know what else to do. He takes the reins between his teeth and drives the wagon forward.
I rested too long. I've got to go. This playtime hasn't ended yet. Because that back alley cobblestone street continues on.
He's trying to convince himself that he can still move, that the dream is still alive, but all he's really doing is running away from the truth that everything he built is gone. When he crashes and then opens his eyes, he's somewhere that shouldn't exist.
Where am I?
You were dreaming about the old days again, weren't you?
I see. A dream.
In that world, the pain is gone. The guilt is gone. He's accepted, maybe even loved. And for a second, it feels like he has found peace. But if he stays there, then everything he's done, every single choice he has made, means nothing. That version of life would make the dream a lie, and he's built his whole identity on proving it was real. So even in that moment, it seems like he can't let it go. So the Behelit, silent for all these years, feels his despair and awakens. And this is genuinely the coolest thing about this egg, is that it doesn't answer to strength. It answers to someone's despair when they're at their lowest. Griffith doesn't call to it through will or fate. It comes to him when he finally breaks, when everything he's buried rises back to the surface. And then comes the moment that ends one life and begins another.
How strange. I can't feel anything.
The God Hand appears, and Griffith finally grasps what they want from him. They offer him the dream he's been chasing since childhood, the kingdom, the light, the power, but the price is everything human left in him. And for a brief second, the part of him that still feels fights to stay alive. That small piece of him that once believed in something beyond the dream tries to surface, but unfortunately it just doesn't last. The dream takes hold again.
I sacrifice.
And then the feast begins, and the world falls apart around him. His body, his soul, and every trace of the person he was are swallowed whole. When he returns, he isn't reborn as something new. He's a reflection of the dream itself. Power without mercy, and purpose without feeling. And he isn't another being. He's still Griffith, but just buried somewhere inside that cold, latexy perfection. The same dream that once gave his life meaning now locks him inside. What began as a ladder to climb has become a prison he can never leave, and maybe doesn't even want to. And years later, when Guts confronts him on the Hill of Swords, Griffith says,
I wanted to know if I stood before you in my new body, whether or not the sight of you would move my heart. It seems I'm free, at last.
Nothing for what you did? For all the ones you betrayed? Are you trying to tell me that you feel nothing at all?
I shall never betray my dream. That's all there is.
So, he truly hasn't changed. And he's still chasing that same castle. And I guess what I really struggle with is, how do you defend someone who sold his soul to the God Hand, who sacrificed his friends, who did things so unforgivable that even saying you understand feels wrong, but also someone who never shied away from what they want and what they would do to get it? When I think about Griffith, I don't see a villain entirely. I see someone who took the same desire we all have, to be seen, to be more, and followed it so far away that there was no turning back. But what about you? Do you think that the man was born sinful, or did he become sinful? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. And now remember, the important thing is to never, ever stop questioning. Even me. Till next time. Don't forget to eat your cereal and drink your coffee. Bye!